face. All right. There we go. Can they see me? All right. Well, this is as good as it's gonna get. All right. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Turn my other microphone on here. So we left off roughly about the fourth page in the Mus'haf, which is going to correspond to approximately the 18th or 19th ayah. So we had talked about, I think last time we had gone through the example of those, they exchanged guidance, right, for fire. And then Allah he gave this parable about, right, a cloud in the sky and the darkness that's found in there, and that, the people are only able to move, an inch or so before, the thunderclap, right, the lightning takes away their sight. Allah says, وَيَكَادُ الْبَرْقُ يَخْطَفُ أَبْصَارَهُمْ كُلَّمَا أَضَاءَتْ لَهُمْ مَشَوْا فِيهِ إِذَا أَظْلَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ قَامُوا. Right. So he's talking about this all this leading up to this verse about the 18th, 19th ayah, partly was dealing with the subject that we said of what nifaq, right? So the Al-Baqarah opens up, it starts talking about guidance, right, about belief, and then it addresses disbelief, and then it goes into a long tract of dealing with hypocrisy. And then eventually it changes, where Allah then addresses mankind. Ya ayyuhan nas u'budu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum alladhi min qablikum walladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. So this verse then deals with, I think, an important question that some human beings will ask themselves, like, why am I here? How did I get here? Right? These kinds of questions that are as probably old as human beings have been around. And it's interesting that some of the scholars have pointed out to the different way that Allah speaks in the Qur'an. Sometimes, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, which is, O you to believe. Sometimes this is done, as they say, towards, right, like the Medinan period. And then before that, Ya ayyuhan nas, just in general. But, most of the scholars say that this part, even though maybe earlier on in the period in Medina, Allah is still addressing the general concerns of people, right? So it's not just that once the Muslims make the immigration to Medina, that Allah is only now speaking in this binary of, believer, disbeliever, but is also still, calling people, making da'wah to people. Ya ayyuhan nas u'budu rabbakum, right? With the simple call of, O people, worship your Lord, right? This is something that addresses what is one of the purposes of life, right? Worship is, as we know, why we are here. It is central to our existence, right? We're not here for the other million sundry reasons we can think of, the things that we enjoy, but primarily we are here to worship. Now, within that, there's many obviously wonderful aspects about life to enjoy. So Allah is also, again, addressing people in a very universal manner, voice, so to speak, and is addressing them specifically to what is our purpose. I'budu rabbakum, right? Worship your Lord, right? Alladhi khalaqakum, who made you, right? You didn't come about by yourselves. And that this idea of being makhluq, or being created, is going further than just the fact that we are mawlud, we are born, right? All of us are born from our mothers, and yet that is not the same as being created, right? So Allah Ta'ala is saying to people, right, worship your Lord who has created you, right? وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. So it also helps to tie a string, right? Particularly this audience in Mecca, right? That you have come from this long chain of human beings that have been created going back to Adam. And this is a thread or a chain that ties you together. And I think, and we can talk about it, one of the things that I see today, and I apologize, I don't know why I'm losing my voice for some reason. One of the things I see about us living here in the West in particular is history is a really bizarre subject matter. I feel like as Americans, we don't tend to know history really well. Now, we may have some historical facts, like, you know, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Right? We don't want to say that that came on the tail of the expulsion of the Muslims, right, from Spain. You know, and I'm not even just, that doesn't have to be centering the Muslims, right? There's also some other things that, you know, very soon were to jump off about the time, and, you know, slavery and all this other stuff. But we have a very fragmented and detached sense of self. And that's partly because we all come from, you know, especially in America, right? We come from so many different places. And I've said many times in the Muslim community, the blessing of diversity is also a challenge, because in my readings, I can't find any other time in Muslim history where there has been such incredible diversity under one masjid, so to speak, right? So that's a particular challenge for America. But also even further than that is, I think people in the West are sometimes very cut off to global history, right? We might know that the dinosaurs lived, you know, 10 million years ago or something, but we don't really know much about, you know, the development of history and how things have gotten to where they be. So in this way, right, saying about, you know, your Lord, الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. This is an important thing to let us know that, you know, we didn't just spring up out of the ground, that we're here, we're made, we're not even born, right, but we are created, right? This turns an idea on, in some ways, it challenges the notion of a empirically based understanding of reality as being the only means of understanding what reality is. Now, I'll try to unpack that. What do I mean by empirical, right? We're talking about science and scientism, right, which is what? Based upon the 5 empirical senses, what, you know, sight, hearing, touch, taste, what else did I miss? Smell, right, thank you. Clearly, I'm not very empirical this evening. But as science has risen to essentially crowd out any competitors in modern Western history, science has successfully pretty much kind of crowded out most of the competitors of being able to add to or challenge or have their own, something to add to what is the nature of reality, right? This is really showing us that we are more than just biological entities, right, that developed on their own. And I don't want to go into too much of a side rant, but I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were trying to wrestle out the question of evolution. And he was like, I'm having a really hard time. And then people bring these questions to me all the time. And I said, well, I'm not going to tell you one way to think about it or the other. But he kept really like, well, what is your take on it? And I said, well, you know, I think evolution is an interesting idea, but it has some parts that don't quite add up. And he kind of asked, well, what did I mean? And I said, well, take a snake, for instance, right? A poisonous snake, right? Now, if I'm to understand that things developed based upon adaptation out of need, right? Well, if the snake needs venom to survive, what happened to all the other snakes that didn't have no venom? So if venom was the key to its adaptation, well, how did it even survive to adapt if it didn't? And then on top of it, you're telling me that this adaptation took millions of years to produce. Well, how did the other snakes get along for millions of years? I'm not trying to be cute. I'm just saying these are some aspects where I think evolution, instead of being the totality of which everything has to fit into it, for me, it's actually a piece that may fit into a broader ontology or explanation of what reality is. I mean, clearly some things change, but then it's also, what was the first, like I said, the other one was really funny, it's like dolphins, right? Dolphins live in the ocean, but they're mammals. So they can't breathe in water, right? They have to breathe underwater, so they gotta come up. Now you're telling me that this is one of the most intelligent animals on the face of the earth for millions of years has not figured out a way to not just become a fish. Like if you're gonna adapt to your environment, why don't dolphins just become fish? Because that would be a much greater and more advantageous adaptation than to literally hold your breath all your life on the water. Or just say, you know what, I had enough of living in the ocean, I'm gonna just live on land like the other mammals. Because this is some stuff having to hold my breath every single day of my life. So again, for me, the question of evolution, right, going back to this, difference between simply being born versus created, right, it does not fit well into how the origin of species literally began. Which is what Allah is like, الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Allah is what? Your Lord who created you and created those before you. So this is a very important part here that's telling the human being that they just didn't come about, right? That they are here by purpose and design. الَّذِينَ جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا, right? And that now more importantly, what is now our relationship with the world around us? Right? What is our relationship with the world around us? Allah is saying what? He is the one who has also made the earth a firash, right? Like a spread out carpet, so to speak. Right? وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً, and that Allah has made, right? He's literally made the sky a construction. Right? So now we're also being shown and told, right, how did things, necessarily come about, and also for what purpose? وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجْ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ, right? And that Allah is the one that caused the rain to come down from the sky and causes, right, these plants to grow, of which they are a resource for you and provider for you to eat from, right? So it's also telling us very importantly what is our relationship to the nature of the world around us, and most importantly, because again, one of the central messages of the Qur'an is a message of Tawheed, is a message of the oneness of Allah. It is a message that designates La ilaha illahu, there is nothing to worship except for Him. So it also shows that the world is created. And therefore, if we are created and the world is created, then we are not to worship the world or anything that is in it. Right? This is very important nowadays where, environmentalism has almost become a kind of religion. And I'm not against, being environmentally conscious. Matter of fact, we very, very much should. But it almost it's like borderline religion where there's this reverence of the earth that really ought to be directed towards the one that made the earth, right? So Allah Ta'ala is telling us here, الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ. And Allah says then specifically right after this, فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا, don't set up equals with God. Right? So don't, you yourself shouldn't worship another man, right? So if you are created, then no other man should be worshipped. Whether that is, Isa ibn Maryam or anything else, right? That mankind should not be worshipped, nor should anything from the created or natural world should be created, right? وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, right? And while you are cognizant and know this, right? You know that this is the case, right? So don't set up partners with God. And then I think, especially for tonight's lesson, and I don't know why this has been coming up repeatedly with so many people, is that, Islam is a religion that cannot function very well with the practitioner of Islam, in other words, the Muslim, if he or she has doubt in their heart, right? Doubt is the thing that's really going to, it's like putting diesel in a gasoline engine. It's just going to muck everything up. So in this, Allah says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا, right? If you're in doubt about what we have revealed to our slave, in other words, what this Qur'an that we have revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Doubt, right? In kuntum fi ghaib, if you have any doubts about it, right? It's not going to. Islam cannot work very well. I was having a conversation actually today with a brother who was so unsure whether or not Allah Ta'ala was pleased with what he was doing or this and that he was like a nervous wreck. And I asked him, I said, well, are you committing, this is not like some sort of Islamic Catholicism here, but I'm just asking your brother, like, are you doing something that's like horrific? Like, we all sin, but did you kill somebody? Did you cheat somebody out of money? Like, what did you do? No, nothing like that. Okay, like, well then, what is the issue? And after like 5 or 10 minutes, it just came to this person was so insecure out of a lack of reading the book, right? Because if you read the book, it's clear that, Allah forgives all sins. It's clear that, if you make a mistake that you make tawbah. If you read the book, then you understand that you know what to do if you make a mistake in life, right? Islam will not work very well if you are constantly doubting, do I put my foot over here? Do I put my foot over there? It's not going to work well with that kind of system, right? And therefore, Allah Ta'ala is saying, if you have doubts about it, then bring something like it in proof, right? Fa'tu bi surah, right? Bring a chapter or a surah, like with the surah in the Qur'an. Bring a surah, mislihi, right? And then, call your witnesses. And part of this is Allah is addressing, like, look, belief is never going to work if you don't take me at my word. Allah Ta'ala is, especially out of all peoples, right? These are Arabs living in the middle of the desert. Their language, obviously we all know about the, really wonderful qualities, the poetic qualities of the Arabic language, right? Which is why it had such a major impact upon the Arabs, right? So here you are, up to the Medina period. So we're not just like starting off at Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, right? They've heard a lot of the Qur'an by now. And Allah is just saying, like, look, if you still don't believe in this, then bring some. If what you've heard by now hasn't convinced you, then bring something, because clearly you've had to have heard enough by now. We shouldn't be having this convo. We should be having this conversation. It should be at this point, how do I submit and accept the message and work on conforming myself to it, right? That doubt is not going to work well. In kuntum sadiqeen, right? If you are truthful, right? And this goes again. I always like it when I come across this word, the root of sadaqah, right? Or when we give sadaqah, right? That we think of, if you ask somebody, like, what does sadaqah mean? What does sadaqah mean? Anybody? Charity. We always say sadaqah is charity. Alms. Alms for the poor. With our Shakespearean English, alms for the poor. God bless us, everyone. Right? Well, no. Zakah is from the verb zakah, which means to purify. it's interesting, sadaqah, right, the verb and the root, all of this, right? When we think about Abu Bakr, his name is what? As-Siddiq. Was he the charitable one? Or was he known for being what?
Noble.
Well, truthful. Right? For the one that sadaqah, the one that does sadaqah, it is one who is confirming a truth. So when we give somebody else, right, whether it is in our family or some stranger off of the street, if we give that person something of our wealth, in reality, what is our motivation? What is my motivation for giving some random stranger money on the street to help him out? Is it just that I'm trying to be nice? Mm-hmm. It is nice. But as a Muslim, what am I doing?
Something that you have to do. Like
right? Allah talks about what? That الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ دَاعِمُونَ وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ. Right? In the wealth is a right.
So you're like a messenger.
لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. Right? That the poor have a right to our wealth. Right? That's a verse that Allah says, actually there's a couple different surah in the Qur'an where Allah talks about وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. Right? That when you're giving, as a Muslim, giving some of your wealth to somebody that is not you, this is a confirmation of what? Truth. The book is what? Al-Haq, the truth, right? So when we're talking about sadaqah or as-sadiqun, we're talking about what people who are truthful. So Allah is challenging the Quraysh. You've heard so much of this book by now in your wonderful language, which Ivan just came along and just called everybody's hand, made everybody put their cards on the table like, wow, this is some amazing, right? They said, like, put cotton in your ears because it's like sihr, it's like magic. So you've heard enough of this by now, quit playing games, either that or put your cards on the table. فَأْتُوا بِصُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهَا, right? وَدَعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. What is this sadiq? Truthful. Right? You got something better? Then be truthful. Show it. If not, right, then zip it and get with the program. We don't, this is the authority that Allah Ta'ala has. Right? He is, al-mutakabbir. Right? This is literally like put up or shut up. Not put up or shut up after iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Okay, we heard that, but maybe bring me something else. Bring me another surah, right? In the surah I recited tonight, inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli rabbika wanhar inna shaniyaka huwa al-abtar. Right, 3 ayat, very short. Bring something like that. They were never able to respond to it, right? فإن لم تفعلوا ولم تفعلوا فاتقوا النار. Right? So he says what? If you can't do it, and by the way, you will never do it, right? So let's get this monkey business out of the way, right? فاتقوا النار. And here comes another important word that I like to tease out a little bit. Anybody know the meaning of the word, or the word taqwa, right? Where does the word taqwa come from?
Consciousness.
I love it, consciousness. What is conscious? This sounds great. I wish I was conscious. What is conscious? No, I'm serious. We use these terms, right? What is consciousness?
Being aware of
right?
that Allah is watching us and
conscious. Okay, but I'm watching you.
aware.
I'm watching all of you. I am. I have my eye on you, right? Big Brother watches this all the time. They were probably here at the khutbah today. If not, I'm sure they downloaded it into their database and analyzed it for, terrorist activity. we're watched, right? Conscious.
Awareness.
Awareness. I'm trying to get us a little closer to something, though.
You mean being Allah's commands and staying away from his prohibitions?
Okay, so we're on the right path with that.
Fearing
Uh,
even getting close to anything that's displeasing to Allah. Fearing even getting close to anything, right?
Right. So here's the thing with the word. Right. So the word taqwa is a verb, right? Taqwa is a verb. But the way that Allah Ta'ala uses, taqwa is a noun, right? So the word taqwa is a noun. But Allah Ta'ala, it says, fattaqu, right? Do taqwa, right? A noun, so a noun is what? A person, place, or thing, right? None of that is action. So if being conscious, like, this is the problem of modern spirituality, right? It's like, what does it do besides light candles and burn incense, right? Or it's all about your feelings, right? Allah says, do taqwa at the fire, right? And not just any fire, the fire. Do taqwa of it.
Like fear.
So, but not, if I'm scared of the fire, well, if I'm scared of the fire, I mean, you've seen Hollywood movies. Sometimes when people get scared, actually they freeze up. That's how Jason always gets them, right? They freeze up and he comes and gets them from right behind. So, fear is a state of being. It's an emotion. That's not the same as do taqwa.
But if you think about the meaning, like تَقُوا النَّارَ الَّتِي وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ, it means like you have to be scared, you have to fear the...
No, so I'm gonna give you a little hint.
But if you fear it, then your actions will show. Right?
Well, now we're getting closer to actions, right? So the problem is, like, we use words all the time. We don't really know the deeper meanings, right? So at Tabrizi, scholar, he said, what al-ittaqa'u, right, or taqwa, he said is أن تجعل بينك وبين ما تخاف حاجزا يحفظك. He said to do taqwa, right, is to place between yourself and that which you fear a barrier so that it protects you. Right? Because you can't protect yourself once you're in the fire. So you can only protect yourself from the fire outside of it. And therefore you have to do whatever means is necessary to not go into it. Right? So either put it out or move away from it, right? Well, when it comes to Jahannam, there is no putting it out. So there's only distancing oneself from it, right? So this is about an attitude of behavior. Behavior means what in English? Right? Actions, right? It's not just about abstract concepts. It's not about some, I don't know, some like, fortune cookie thing that sounds really cool. No, it's rooted in action. It'd almost be like avoid the fire, protect yourself. The thing about ittaqa is rooted in protection. This is the real meaning of protection, but the iftala'a, the wazn of iftala'a, right? The wazn of iftala'a means what? To do for self. Right, so protect oneself. This is the meaning of taqwa. Self-protection from a thing. And then Allah will often tell you what? Protect yourself, fattaqu nar, or fattaqu yawm. Allah says what? Protect yourself from a day. And he uses that a day when you know what day he means. Right? So it's rooted in protection. And there's a piece of Jahili poetry that says, سأقضي حاجتي ثم أتقي عدوي بألف من روائي ملجمي. So this is a line of Jahili poetry, right, in which Zubair says, after some people killed my brother, I'm going to satisfy my desire for revenge, سأقضي حاجتي, right? By what? Killing them, right? Revenge. Now this is Jahili poetry. But then he says, because I know once I kill them, they're going to come at me, so he said, ثُمَّ أَتَّقِي, I'm going to protect myself from their reprisal with what? بِأَلْفٍ مِّن الرَّوَاعٍ مِّن جِمِيعٍ, with 1,000 spears and horses. Right? So the word taqwa is rooted in protecting oneself from something that causes harm. It's preemptive, right? It's not about once you're in it, it's too late, right? It's a preemptive measure of protection. So fattaqun nar is about what? Protect yourself from the fire preemptively. Because if you're in the fire, it's because Allah has put you in there. And guess what? You ain't coming out unless He lets you out. So there's nothing you can do once you're there, right? So this language is very important. And more especially, getting back to a behavioral understanding or an action-rooted understanding of reading the Qur'an. I read it, I gotta do something. I read this verse, I gotta do something with myself. Right? I've got, not just this purification, yes, but purification is rooted in action, right? Not just in some sort of abstract, right, state of mind. And so this part here, this passage going to the end of page 4, right? It is in some ways telling the human being, look, this back and forth is only going to go on so much. And again, if you take it from a chronological of Revelation, even though this is the beginning of the Mus'haf, right, this is not the beginning of Revelation. This is very important to understand. So even though we're only on page 4, in many ways it's more like we're on page like maybe 350 of a 600-page book, right? So he's telling, people, look, enough is enough. You've heard this, either get with the program or bring something like it, right? And to give you a little incentive, right? Fear this thing whose fuel is what? Men and stones. That's like, its fuel is like, that's a heck of a fire that can burn stone. And even more importantly, if you're even thinking about being somebody that would disbelieve in this, u'iddat lil kafirin. Now this particular voice, u'iddat, we call this al-mabni lil majhul. This is the passive voice in the Arabic language that shows that something has already been done in the past, but then it is without the fa'al. It's like it removes it's kind of scary, is really what the language, it might be hard for bringing it into English, but this idea of u'iddat is already done. Lil kafirin, right? For the kind of person that would reject this message. Now, if you walk it back, it's like it's already prepared. What's prepared? A fire, right? Men and stones. What is men and stones? A fire that burns men and stones. The fuel is men and stones, of which, right, you're never going to be able to, and you could not bring anything like it. What? This, a verse like that you're hearing right now in this Qur'an that's being revealed to you. Right? It's completely deconstructing and breaking this down, and either you're gonna just finally get with the program or not. And we should, the real thing for us as people say, okay, I believe. What about the garden? Right? For those of us that believe, this should stand as a healthy reminder about the seriousness of this life, right? That this life isn't a joke, right? Even though Allah Ta'ala sometimes describes it as being lahu and la'ab, right? Like it's kind of play, but it's still serious, right? And the idea of it being lahu and la'ab, this sort of play and distraction, is that yes, it's impermanent. But the one thing that Allah talks about the hereafter is it's what? It's permanent, abqa, right? It doesn't fade away. So this should be taken as a motivator for us to sometimes fall back upon. I feel like our community has gotten into this weird space now where nobody wants to hear any mention of the fire. And I'm not a big proponent of overly talking about the fire, because at the same time, right, the Qur'an talks about the garden in such a beautiful way that I feel that you need something positive too, right? At the same time, we can't pretend now. Well, it's almost as weird. It's like nobody's kafir anymore. You don't know what Stephen Hawking said on his deathbed. Neither do you. But I know what he wrote and he said during his life, and that's what I'm gonna take him at, right? And secondly, it's not about me wishing anything negative on anybody, but that's what the man did. Now, what's funny is some Muslims will say, well, you don't know what Stephen Hawking said when he passed away. Well, number one, you wouldn't either, because that dude needed that little thingamajig to speak with, so you don't know what he said either, right? But do you know what Osama bin Laden said at the end of it? And I'm not any advocate of that stuff, right? But seriously, he's a Muslim. He might have been a horrible Muslim, right? Or all these other people that we see that do horrible things. I remember in Philadelphia about 10 years ago or so, there's, I think, 2 or 3 young brothers, very misguided, dressed up as Muslim women, and robbed a bank. And in the process of the bank robbery, shot and killed a police officer. I mean, this is like bad upon bad upon bad. I mean, you've taken a life. You've impersonated a woman, which Allah's messenger said was cursed, right? Allah says what? The woman that imitates the man and vice versa is cursed. So you dressed up in a cursed attire and then deceived people and then took somebody's life. Well, let me tell you, when this happened, the Muslims were like, we ain't touching them, man. We ain't burying them. We ain't doing like, hey, wait. I very much feel your anger, but as far as I know, they're still a Muslim. They might have been very misguided in terms of their actions, but they still have a right to a Muslim burial. And that's what I mean by, like, now we are so quick to dismiss people who don't live up to our ideal of Muslim piety, and we'll cast them out. But somebody who is clearly not Muslim and advocated for the existence of no God, some of us are quick to say, we don't know what he whispered at the end of his life, right? This shows, like, again, like I talked about today in the khutbah, we have been massaged and cajoled and bullied, all this into just following the dominant culture in this society as if we believe they got it all figured out, right? This goes even to the theological level, and this is very problematic. You know, this is really a major problem for us in that we don't even feel we have enough space to come to our own conclusions about Muslims. Like, I've had some non-Muslims come to me and say, like, you know, Osama bin Laden wasn't even a Muslim. I said, well, whoa, like, as far as I know, he was a Muslim. He might have been a horrible Muslim. And I'm not saying that it don't look good, right, where he might be going. But I can't just say the man isn't Muslim because he did something, horrendous, right? And this is something we should definitely avoid just due to pressure, right? Now, that's one thing to have a conversation about, this is almost like a Khawarij attitude, right? A person isn't Muslim based upon their action. Like, no, he's a Muslim. He said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu, right? Only this is some kind of weird Khawarij thing, right? The Kharijites who, a person, if he drinks, he's out of Islam. Or if he, commits zina, he's out of Islam. No, right? And yet we will accept this kind of like non-Muslim, Khawarij judgment. And we're like, oh yes, that's true. But when it comes to non-Muslim, right, somehow, well, brother, only Allah knows and judges. So getting back to the, just the seriousness of life, this particular part here ending is what, just, protect yourself from the fire. And again, this whole passage begins with what? Ya ayyuhan nas. We are part of an-nas. So this message about what? Fattaqun nar. This message of fear of fire. وقودها الناس والحجارة. أعدت للكافرين. Right? It's fuel as men and stones is already prepared. Is for us. It's for the Muslim, the non-Muslim, the Jew, the Buddhist, the whoever. Right? This is a unqualified warning to humanity. Take your life seriously, right? And then take preemptive steps, right? To put yourself in a good standing with your Lord. Because Allah has come and said, look, can't you just look out your own window? الَّذِي جَعَلَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا, and blah, 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 all this natural world, right? Right? Just stop being stubborn, right? Stop covering up the truth. And this is the thing, you might not always like what the truth is. I mean, I know we all want to sit here and smile at each other, but I bet you one of us is like, man, I don't like that. I got to fast 29 days every year, right? Brothers be talking, I can't wait for Ramadan. Really? Why don't you come on Thursday when I have iftar? I'm asking you to fast one day out of the week, one day out of the month. I can't get you to come to that one time. I see you at the buffet, all you can eat on Monday and Thursday, right? But you're going to talk to me trash to me on Tuesday. I can't wait for Ramadan. Yeah, I bet, right? So, it's more of having a practical, action-based, behavioral-based relationship with the Qur'an that inshallah will bring us closer to Him and make us recipients of His rahmah, His hidayah, His mercy, and His guidance, inshallah. Any questions? Any thoughts, questions before we break? Everybody's fasting Monday, Thursday? All right.
So the word taqwa, what is the English?
Right, to protect yourself.
Because it comes in two different places, taqullah and then taqunnar.
Right.
It can't have the same meaning in both, or it does have the same
It does. Protect yourself, right?
yourself.
Right. I mean, like, protect yourself from God. It sounds like, but if you think about it, right? Right, you can only preemptively protect yourself from Allah, right? You cannot, when you're within the grip of Allah, there's no protection, right? But you can protect yourself from the azab of Allah by what? Repentance, trying your best to avoid what's bad, repenting when you do something wrong, right? Trying to stay within the halal, making repentance when you fall into the haram, right? This kind of thing, right? We look for complicated spirituality. It isn't about incense and candles. It's about honesty. That's why in kuntum sadiqin, if you are truthful, right? So your relationship with Allah is about not how I view you. I mean, you view me, I probably look like, man, this brother Mark, he's great. You have no idea, right? As a matter of fact, if you knew me about 30 years ago, I'd be like, I ain't playing behind this dude. I don't care what he says. It's about having a honest relationship with Allah when nobody's looking, right? Not based upon, okay, now I'm with these people, so I'm put on the front, right? But that deep recesses of your heart and listen to that, right? You do something you know is wrong, listen to that voice, right? And that's what it takes, it takes courage to be pious, right? It doesn't necessarily take knowledge to be pious, right? Piety is not incredibly knowledge-based, and I know that will really affront a lot of people, right? But I mean, if you think about the major pious actions, pray, fast, sadaqah, right, zakah, I mean, these things do not require a tremendous amount of knowledge, but they do require a tremendous amount of what? Discipline, focus, and a desire to be seen by the one that only matters to. That's hard. I don't know about you, but I've been struggling with that for about 28 years. Right? So yeah, the word taqwa is rooted in protecting oneself from something outside of oneself that can cause one harm. Yeah. So, inshallah, we'll pray Isha.